Bonjour tout le monde.
Good morning, everyone. I call this meeting to order.
The Christmas recess, I hope everyone is rested and ready to go. And the weather's not getting us down too much, although I understand it's worse in Toronto. Yes. Have they called the Army in yet?
No, not yet. We're very proud of being so efficient.
Bienvenue à la réunion numéro 22 du
Welcome to meeting number 22 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Accounts.
Formant pursuant to the standing orders. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I do just want to thank all our witnesses for coming in person today. Before I begin, I'd like to remind participants the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking, and comment should be addressed to the chair. That's more if we have a debate of any sort. Conformément à l'article 108.3G du règlement,
Pursuant to Section 108.3 of the Standing Orders, the committee will begin consideration of the report on cybersecurity of government networks and systems. Fall 2025 reports of the Auditor General of Canada referred to the committee on Tuesday, 21st of October 2025.
The witnesses that I just thanked for coming in today, despite the ugly weather. From the Office of the Auditor General, Andrew Hayes, Deputy Auditor General, nice to see you, along with Jean Goulet, Principal, nice to see you as well, sir, thank you. The Treasury Board Secretariat, Dominique Rochon, Chief Information Officer of Canada, nice to see you. Po T. Duncan, Chief Information Security Officer of the Government of Canada, nice to see you as well. Shared Services Canada, Scott Jones, President. Thank you, Mr. Jones, good to see you again. Patrice Nadeau, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Connectivity and Security Services Branch. Nice to see you as well. And from Communications Security Establishment, Carolyn Xavier, Chief, there you are, nice to see you again, yes. And Rajiv Gupta, Head, Canadian Centre for Cyber Security. Thank you all for coming in today. I suspect we'll be using the full 2 hours today, just given the number of esteemed witnesses we have here today. Mr. Hayes, I think you're going to open things up. Each unit department will have 5 minutes. You'll kick things off, please, for 5 minutes, please.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to appear before your committee today to discuss our report on the cybersecurity of government networks and systems, which was tabled on the 21st of October 2025. First of all, let me acknowledge that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I am accompanied by Jean Goulet, the Senior Director who was responsible for the audit. The central responsibility for protecting the government's information technology systems and operations rests jointly with the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat, the Communications Security Establishment Canada, and Shared Services Canada. These organizations work together and with departments and agencies to prevent data theft and limit disruption to the systems that deliver programs and services to Canadians. We have found that although the federal government had tools to protect and defend its networks and systems against cyber attacks, there were significant gaps in cybersecurity defense services, monitoring, and response when attacks occurred.
Only 42% of federal organizations are required by Treasury Board policy to use the cybersecurity defense services offered by Shared Services and the Communications Security Establishment. Others have opted in, but this inconsistent use of services undermines the federal government's ability to protect critical information and manage risks. We also found that coordination among the three organizations was too slow during active cyber attacks. For example, poor coordination delayed the government's response during a major attack 2 years ago. This extended the time during which the attacker had access to public servants' personal information. Protecting federal networks and systems also requires analyzing the potential vulnerabilities of all government IT devices, including laptops, smartphones, and servers. We found that Shared Services and the Communications Security Establishment did not have a comprehensive inventory of all government devices. Without up-to-date information, the federal government risks being unable to quickly respond to a changing cybersecurity landscape. Malicious actions, external events, and attacks targeting the Canadian government's digital systems are frequent and more sophisticated. A coordinated and comprehensive approach to the government's cybersecurity posture, better collaboration, and a current inventory of IT devices are key to safeguarding Canadians' information. Monsieur le Président, je termine.
Mr. Chair, that concludes my opening statement. We look forward to answering questions from committee members. Thank you.
Et merci beaucoup, Monsieur Hayes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayes, followed by Mr. Rochon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to speak about the Auditor General's performance audit on the cybersecurity of government networks and systems, which is Report 5 of her Fall 2025 reports. I'm pleased to appear today with my colleagues from Shared Services Canada and the Communications Security Establishment, and indeed the Office of the Auditor General, and in particular, Po T. Duncan from my office, the Government of Canada's Chief Information Security Officer. Mr. Chair, protecting the government's IT infrastructure from vulnerabilities and responding to cybersecurity threats is critical to protecting Canadians' data and the services the Government of Canada provides them. And as Canadians increasingly access government programs and services online, network security is more important than ever. The Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat is named in 2 of the recommendations in the audit. The first such recommendation is that TBS, in consultation with the Communications Security Establishment, ensure that federal organizations implement the Communications Security Establishment's cyber defense sensors on all their IT endpoint devices so that their associated vulnerabilities can be identified and remediated. The second recommendation is that Treasury Board Secretariat, Shared Services Canada, and the Communications Security Establishment reevaluate their cybersecurity incident management practices to enable better coordination and timely access to required critical information when responding to cybersecurity incidents affecting federal organizations. Monsieur le Président, le gouvernement...
Mr. Chair, the government is committed to reducing cybersecurity risks in order to protect its systems and consequently Canadians' information, and to ensure the continued delivery of secure and reliable digital services. The TBS welcomes the recommendations made by the Auditor General and will continue its collaboration with Shared Services Canada and the Communications Security Establishment Canada to implement those recommendations. When it comes to evaluating our cybersecurity incident management practices to improve the rapid communication of critical information, the Treasury Board Secretariat, in collaboration with its partners, regularly reviews our operational framework known as the Government of Canada Cybersecurity Event Management Plan. Lessons learned from cyber simulation exercises, also known as tabletop exercises, have enabled the TBS to identify improvements that are then applied to the plan to ensure its effectiveness. The Government of Canada, like all public and private sector organizations, is facing ongoing and evolving cyber threats. In order to maintain a strong cyber defense posture, the Treasury Board Secretariat, in consultation with the Communications Security Establishment Canada, will work with federal organizations to ensure that the establishment's defense sensors are installed on all endpoint devices, be they laptop servers or workstations. We will achieve this in part through a tool that quickly identifies IT endpoints where no sensors are deployed. This will subsequently enable us to detect, assess, and prioritize vulnerabilities to be corrected on IT devices in government networks.
To enhance the government's cybersecurity, Budget 2024 provided $11.1 million over 3 years, starting in 2024-2025, for the Treasury Board Secretariat to begin implementing a whole-of-government cybersecurity strategy. This included measures to support the rapid identification, assessment, and management of vulnerabilities across the enterprise, the formation of a Purple Team, that will emulate techniques used by malicious threat actors to proactively test and audit any security gaps, and the creation of a program to improve cyber assurance and risk evaluation for the Government of Canada enterprise. Mr. Chair, network cybersecurity is vital for the government to protect Canadians' data and services, ensure national security, maintain economic prosperity, and uphold public trust in an increasingly digital world. We agree with the Auditor General's recommendations and, along with our partners, are taking action to address her concerns. Thank you, and following my colleague's opening remarks, I will welcome the committee members' questions.
Thank you very much. Up next, Mr. Jones, please, for 5 minutes.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity to discuss the Auditor General's report on the cybersecurity of government networks and systems. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I'm accompanied today by Patrice Nadeau, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister for SSC's Connectivity and Security Services Branch. Shared Services Canada welcomes the Auditor General's findings and is working to address the issues raised. It is important to underline that the Auditor General found that the government had tools in place to protect and defend its networks, and that the government's cybersecurity plan was sound and comprehensive. As the provider of IT services to departments and agencies, SSC plays a pivotal role.
About 6.5 trillion cyber threats annually, which is an average of 18 billion a day. This ensures the uninterrupted operation of government services. We do that through a state-of-the-art enterprise infrastructure and modern commercial cybersecurity solutions that defend government systems against a wide range of cyber threats. SSC uses multiple layers of defense and prevention, including firewalls, network defenses, anti-denial of service measures, antivirus and anti-malware tools, encryption, virtual private networking, and robust identification and authentication services. We have an excellent partnership with our colleagues at the Treasury Board Secretariat and the Communications Security Establishment. This collaboration is absolutely vital, as the Auditor General underscored, and we continue to improve it. We regularly conduct postmortems on cyber events to identify ways we can always do better. Together, SSC and CSE's Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity provide sophisticated cyber defenses that go beyond commercial capabilities. Our work offers one of the most sophisticated cyber defenses in the world. Cybersecurity is a space that is evolving fast, and we work continuously to keep on top of it. That said, there is more to do, as the Auditor General rightfully underscored. We share the Auditor General's concerns about organizations that are outside of SSC's enterprise internet service. As the threat environment changes rapidly, that is a model that clearly needs to evolve. This is why SSC is now working to provide connectivity and security services to 43 small departments and agencies, and is on track to complete this work by the end of March 2027. The Auditor General also highlighted a project called Endpoint Visibility and Awareness Security, or EVAS for short. This is one of the tools SSC is adding to its cybersecurity environment. EVAS will automatically identify network-connected endpoints, such as desktops and servers, and verify they meet security requirements. Unlike our semi-manual system, EVAS is automated and enables real-time vulnerability and impact assessments. EVAS will also provide automated response to cyber events. While there were delays to this project, our organization has learned a number of lessons. This project has turned the corner, and since implementation began in July of 2025, over 36,000 deployments have been completed. The Auditor General also highlighted our project to develop a Security Information and Event Management System, or SIM for short. SIEM, some people pronounce it. I want to assure you that we are on track to award a competitive contract for this project in early 2026. Further, SSC is currently operating an interim SIM capability, which allows SSC and our partners at the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity to manage priority needs and supports an effective response to cyber threats. Mr. Chair, since SSC's creation, we have shifted the government's business model from one that is siloed and decentralized to a government-wide enterprise approach. This not only reduces costs, but strengthens overall security government of Canada-wide. It is easier to monitor, patch, and fix one system than 45 separate ones. And it is easier to invest in one system than 45 separate ones. We are not done. SSC is streamlining the management of devices and software by centralizing procurement and operations. This achieves considerable efficiencies and reduces the potential for inconsistencies in security policies. We're also continuing to reduce duplication by replacing additional siloed back-office tools with standard government-wide tools. Legacy systems are also more vulnerable to cyber threats, as was pointed out in another Auditor General review. Moving off legacy systems improves our cybersecurity posture. En bref, tout ce que nous faisons pour consolider et moderniser.
In short, everything we do to consolidate and modernize IT systems is essential to improving cybersecurity. Mr. Chair, reports from the Auditor General are also an important tool to hold us accountable and allow us to improve our operations. Cybersecurity is an evolving field with actors that don't follow our rules. Continuous improvements are key to protecting the government's IT systems. Thank you once again for the opportunity to speak on this important file, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you. We thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Xavier, you have 5 minutes.
Chair and members of the committee, bon matin, Monsieur le Président.
Good morning, Chair, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me to discuss the Auditor General's report on the cybersecurity networks.
And I am the Chief of the Communications Security Establishment, also known as CSE. And I'm joined today by Rajiv Gupta, head of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, which is also known as the Cyber Centre, which forms an integral part of CSE. Nous sommes heureux de témoigner au
We are pleased to appear alongside our colleagues from the Treasury Board Secretariat and Shared Services Canada, with whom we work closely on cyber security issues.
brief overview of CSC and our Cyber Centre, and then share how we are responding to an increasingly complex threat landscape, on one that includes cyber threats, risks to economic security, violent extremism, foreign interference, disinformation campaigns, and more. Avant de commencer, je veux aussi souligner.
Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We acknowledge that this nation has been on this land since time immemorial. CSE is an autonomous organization and one of the Canadian organizations or agencies responsible for cybersecurity and intelligence.
Foreign signals intelligence on a wide range of threats to help the Government of Canada make informed decisions and safeguard Canada's interests while strictly following Canadian law and privacy standards. We also defend Government of Canada networks and systems of national importance against malicious cyber activity targeting Canada's digital infrastructure. Through the Cyber Centre, we serve as the national and technical authority for cybersecurity, providing a single, trusted source of expert advice and guidance for Canadians and organizations across the country. By integrating cybersecurity, signals intelligence, foreign cyber operations, CSE is uniquely positioned to strengthen Canada's overall defense and security. The integrity of Canada's cyberspace is foundational to our country's future. It underpins our digital economy, protects personal safety, and strengthens national resilience. In 2024 to 2025, CSE produced more than 3,300 foreign intelligence reports and responded to over 2,500 cyber incidents affecting federal institutions and critical infrastructure partners. We also issued over 330 pre-ransomware notifications to more than 300 Canadian organizations, early warnings that help prevent serious harm. As the threat landscape evolves, so do we. Our world-recognized Cyber Defense Sensor Program provides real-time detection of malicious cyber activity across Government of Canada networks and cloud environments. This program is available to all federal departments and agencies and Crown corporations upon request, and enables our experts to block and neutralize threats before they cause harm. While many federal organizations manage their own IT infrastructure, they can leverage CSE's sensor program and the Cyber Centre's expert guidance to strengthen their defenses. Today, most federal institutions use at least one of our sensors. We also continue to deepen our engagement with Crown corporations, critical infrastructure operators, and provincial and territorial partners. CSE welcomes the Auditor General's report and supports its recommendations, particularly those aimed at strengthening sensor deployment and improving incident management coordination. As my colleagues have highlighted, we are working closely together to expand the deployment of cyber defense sensors across federal networks and refine incident response protocols. Ces conclusions s'appuient sur les progrès importants.
These efforts build on significant progress already made to modernize and secure the digital systems that deliver essential services to Canadians. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility, and collaboration remains at the heart of our approach. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the threat environment is dynamic, but our commitment is unwavering. Together with our partners, we will continue to protect Government of Canada systems, Canada's critical infrastructure, and digital systems, ensuring Canadians can rely on secure and trusted services. Once again, thank you very much for this opportunity to appear before the committee. We look forward to answering.
Look forward to continued dialogue. Merci.
Thank you all very much. I'll now begin our first round of questions, which will consist of 3 members, 6 minutes each. Ms. Kuzi, you'll kick us off this year. Thank you.
Earlier this month, the Prime Minister announced a new Canada-China strategic partnership. On many fronts, this concerns me, but specific to this meeting, I'm concerned about Canada's cybersecurity and the protection of our private information. In 2024, I was informed by IPAC through the FBI that I had been the target of a cyber attack orchestrated by the PRC. I had been targeted because of my status as a Member of Parliament, and as the Canadian government begins a new economic relationship with the PRC, I'm concerned with how our government assesses these new strategic partnerships with non-democracies on the world stage. Madame Xavier, can you please share with this committee what measures your agencies and departments are taking to ensure the cybersecurity and protection of sensitive data as we enter new agreements with governments like the PRC?
Thank you for the question. So as mentioned in my opening remarks, CSC holds multiple mandates within one agency. One being the foreign intelligence collection that we do to be able to ensure that decision makers have the information they require to make decisions. And that is something we've been doing for almost 80 years. The other part of our mandate is the cybersecurity or cyber defense part of our mandate. And one other part of our mandate is the foreign cyber operations mandate. And having all those elements within one agency really help us to ensure that what we learn from a foreign intelligence SIGINT collection is able to be used in the defense of Canada and vice versa. All the billions of incidents that we protect against in the defense of Canada allows us to learn about threat actors that may have potential interests in Canada. And that then feeds what we can do on the foreign intelligence part of the mandate. In addition to that, in foreign cyber operations, we're able to take actions in cyberspace, in the foreign cyberspace, to be able to ensure that we're continuing to protect Canada. So we operate under cabinet-approved intelligence priorities, which are reviewed on a regular basis. And as it is now, our mandate includes protecting Canada's critical infrastructure, democratic institutions, and whether it's nation states or cyber criminals, that is part of the mandate that we operate on a regular basis, 24/7, 365 days of the year. And so we remain committed to ensure that we do our job effectively. I am pleased and proud of the fact that we lead an organization that puts out world-class cyber defense. And the work that we do in collection with our partners, both at Treasury Board and SSC, allows us to continue to protect Government of Canada systems.
Thank you very much for that extensive answer. You mentioned that you have protected billions of negative interactions, negative interceptions. However, it is apparent to me by the experience that I had, as well as several others, members of Parliament, that the most cunning of evil operators are still able to penetrate the system, which is very concerning to me. You had mentioned the implication of other decision makers. Are there ministers who have given you this direction specifically, and who would those ministers be, please?
So again, thank you for the opportunity to clarify. So our intelligence priorities are driven by the Cabinet of the Government of Canada, and our intelligence priorities actually—
Which Cabinet members, please?
The full Cabinet is who endorses the intelligence priorities of the Government of Canada.
But who provides the direction, please?
The full cabinet provides a direction led by the Prime Minister of the country. And as a result, what we've done as well is we've published the intelligence priorities so that Canadians, have an opportunity to understand what are the priorities that we have. And the priorities are fairly broad, and we are able to work to those priorities in the work that we do.
Thank you very much, Madame Xavier. I'm not getting a lot of good, clear information in terms of what those priorities are and how they are implemented, but thank you. Mr. Hayes, your report from October is not the first to focus on cybersecurity, and as the importance of technology continues to grow, I'm sure it will not be the last, unfortunately. Do you believe hostile actors like the PRC could attempt to act on the security gaps that you mention within this report?
Thank you. There's no doubt that the government faces attacks every day. Indeed, they're stopping billions and trillions every year. So I think that the message from our report is that vigilance and rigor need to be at the top of the mind of every government organization. To us, one of the big findings in our report is that not every federal organization is required to use the services that shared services and communications security establishment provide. That is, in our view, a missed opportunity.
Thank you for that. Monsieur Rochon, over the past year, the government has placed a focus on artificial intelligence and the use of it both within and outside of government. With AI comes a world of opportunity, but also a world of unknowns. How can Canadians be confident their confidential information will be secure and private if your department can't even get federal organizations to follow the existing rules and policies surrounding cybersecurity?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Sorry about let me just say the challenge remains that the Financial Administration Act, Section 7, grants Treasury Board authority to apply general administrative policies, such as the policy on government security, the policy on service and digital, and those policies are applicable to departments and agencies that fall according to a certain schedule. So. That's how the legislative framework is set up, and therefore we cannot impose on agents of Parliament or Crown corporations.
That's not very efficient or effective if you can't impose.
Ms. Kuzi, I'm afraid that is your time. We will certainly come back to you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Chair. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Suivant. Up next is Ms. Yip. You have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you. Happy New Year, and thank you to our witnesses for coming in on a slight snow day here in Ottawa. I'll just note that in Toronto it's 45 centimeters. It's rare that we outsnow Ottawa. So I'm going to direct this question to all three organizations. So how is your organization working on improving collaboration between all three between you, and what steps have you taken that will help protect Canadian national security? So, Mr. Jones, would you like to go first? Sure.
Well, thank you for the question. I think there's a few areas that we're making progress on. So the first thing is that there's been a base of collaboration for over a decade as we've built up this robust system of defenses, and those are relationships. As much as I'm supposed to be leading a technology organization, effective cyber response is about building those relationships and the trust, because a lot of times it's a judgment call until you know for certain. So the first thing is that. The second piece is we are exercising, Mr. Rochon talked about the Purple Team and some of the other pieces that have been put in place lately to exercise. One of the consequences of having a robust defense mechanism is that, unlike when I first started working on cybersecurity with Mr. Gupta in about 14, 15 years ago, we were having incidents happening every day that we were responding to. Now our systems take care of a lot of these things proactively. So these big incidents that we've talked about don't happen often. So you have to continue to practice so that those muscles stay able to work. And so those are a couple of the things that we're doing. The third thing is that every single incident, there's always something that we can learn from, and we do a full after-action review. That's led by my colleagues at Treasury Board. I'll let them speak to this, but that's very important. Even when it goes very well, what could have been done better? What could have been done quicker? What could we learn from this? There's always has to be one. Sadly, with cybersecurity, there usually is a first victim. Our goal together is how do we make sure there's never a second?
Maybe I can just elaborate. It is indeed a team game with regard, as Madame Xavier pointed out in her opening remarks. Cybersecurity, there's no one entity. We form a tripartite in terms of protecting systems across the federal enterprise. At Treasury Board Secretariat, we put in place rules. Indeed, we've promulgated a cybersecurity enterprise strategy for the federal government. We provide advice and guidance, and as Mr. Jones just alluded to, we have a Government of Canada Security Event Management Plan that is indeed followed. So when there's a critical incident, we understand roles, responsibilities, et cetera. But as the Auditor General pointed out, there are some shortcomings with regard to that coordination. Despite the fact that we meet regularly and we're constantly coordinating, there are certain things that we can do better. So we put in place for the first time an exercise, a simulation exercise at the executive level, touching several departments and agencies last May. And drawing from the lessons learned from that exercise, we're going to be updating our security event management plan, among other things. We also keep our policies and our strategy evergreen, and we learn, as Mr. Jones just pointed out, from any critical incident from there. So in terms of our coordination efforts, they go from managing the policies, the direction, the guidelines. It's also a partnership with every department and agency who has to have a designated person responsible for cybersecurity, making sure that they understand and interpret our rules and are putting them in place. Mr. Jones and his organization is responsible for connection to the internet and all of the infrastructure side of things. And then we have the special sauce, if you will, of the Cybersecurity Center led by Mr. Gupta, who above and beyond just putting in place sensors, is doing all sorts of monitoring and connecting with the rest of the communications security establishment to make sure that we stay on top of the threat.
I think the only other thing I would add is the fact that, as I said earlier in my remarks, all that we do from advice of providing guidance and direction is definitely fed from an intelligence perspective, and that is helpful, in addition to the learnings that we are taking from all the incidences that are occurring. And as a learning organization, we strive to always do better, and as was mentioned by Scott, we continue to apply those learnings. I would also add that as tripartite and in the way in which government has organized us as in the cyber defense space, we are the envy of many of how this functions. And so this is why I'm pleased about the fact that we have the sensors that we have to be able to be automated and be able to act on our behalfs 24/7, and then we can dive deeper into them when major incidents happen.
Why are we the envy of others?
Primarily because of the fact that we have a Shared Services Canada that really does do a great job of coordinating all that it does with regards to providing a centralized service to many of our government departments, and anybody that's getting the shared services are then protected by the sensors, because that is part of the standard rollout when it comes to working for Government of Canada and the Government of Canada systems that Scott Jones protects. I mean, Scott could feel free to add more there, but we've heard it where, for example, in UK Parliament, they have touted the Government of Canada's world-class sensor system as one of the sensors that they recognize being world-class, for example.
Thank you, Ms. Yip. That's about your time. I'll give you a few extra seconds next time. Suivant, c'est Monsieur Lemire. Bonjour.
Mr. Lemire, good morning. You have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me take this opportunity to wish you a happy new year 2026. I hope it's going to be very promising for public accounts. At least that's our hope. Thank you, all witnesses, for appearing here. I'm sorry for being late. Sometimes it's because of our duties. First of all, let me say that the RCMP, Global Affairs, the Center for FINTRAC, the Cybersecurity Center, recently stated that hostile forces deployed by the Korean government could have disrupted our systems. Someone speaking on behalf of a group in Canada said that what we are doing is simply a drop in the water. Aran Shaw, Director of Research at the Innovation Center responsible for international governance, said that Canada's dependency on labor outsourced abroad is subjecting us to gaps that could make us vulnerable and make us vulnerable to spying. And these may help malicious agents to integrate our systems. So I would like you to tell us what you think of these statements. The labor that we outsource abroad, is this posing a danger for us when it comes to our cybersecurity strategy? Thank you very much for the question. It's important to state, as we did in our cybersecurity threat assessment, which was published in October 2024, that we do recognize the fact that there are cyber threats from states. One of the states that was named was China, but we've also heard of Korea in our assessments, as well as Russia and other states. Yes, we support the publication that was made because it's in collaboration with us and the Cybersecurity Center that those publications are made known. That is how we can make sure that we are all on the same page and that we make sure that we can provide the right publications, the right advice that the Canadian government can act on. But those publications are not only intended to protect the government. We want to make sure that Canadians and essential infrastructure are concerned, because it's not only the government that is targeted when someone wants to hurt our country when it comes to cybersecurity threats. Of course, we are very vulnerable to the U.S. It's not by signing an agreement with China to bring in electric cars that will help us keep our data. Mr. Jones, the government is recruiting contractors. The question that Ms. Hutchinson is asking is important. What do we do to ensure that we identify the right people and that we know who they really are, considering the deepfakes and tools that are now available? We have cybersecurity measures. Subcontractors must receive authorization to work for the federal government. They go through several levels of verification depending on the access they would have. There are various tools used to check them out. The problem with the threats is that they will always exist. It's impossible to guarantee at all times that everything is covered. We have regulations in place. We have introduced a mandatory course for public servants. They have to take that course every year. We have a vulnerability program. We are studying risks and we follow up. We have also introduced, well, I don't know if you could add more on what I've just said. Thank you for the question.
To effectively test in advance some of the techniques of bad actors that helps us to put in place the right detection measures and protective measures to make sure that we are all staying ahead of the cyber threats. So part of the government policy and government security does ensure that departments and agencies are putting in place the right baseline security controls. So cybersecurity is all about layers of controls. So from the cyber sensors that are put in place on endpoints, at the network, but it's also about protection of data within our information systems. And that's outlined under the policy on government security.
Une des choses qu'on réalise dans les...
One of the things we've realized with names that are used by companies claiming to be indigenous companies. Sometimes we don't really know who is doing the work. And sometimes when people are sent abroad, when work is subcontracted abroad at lower cost, we really don't know who is doing what. Is there a mechanism in place to ensure that work is being done in Canada to avoid the work being subcontracted everywhere in the world? That's a very interesting and difficult question at the same time. Every department and every deputy minister has a responsibility to find out how they implement their programs. What we do at the Treasury Board is that we have directives for people to know that risks exist. So we need to look at the nature of the job. What systems will they have access to? If they have access to our systems, that's where the representatives here before you have a role to play. There are also issues that have to do with the supply chains for equipment. We have regulations in force and procedures to follow up and monitor the situation. Ultimately, it requires teamwork. Every department has to make sure that they're following our rules and that we are aware of access provided to our systems and the nature of the work that will be done by these departments. Thank you very much. We'll start our second round.
Various times. Monsieur Detel, pour 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, dear colleagues. Happy New Year 2026 to all committee members, all Canadians listening to us. Thank you for your presence, witnesses. Thank you for serving our country, your country, when it comes to a situation as sensitive as cybersecurity. Mr. Chair, on this side of the House, Conservatives are very concerned about cybersecurity, particularly when we look at the regime in Beijing. My colleague here is a career diplomat, and she's told us her personal experience. I may have been saved so far, but we are never, we are not really free. You mentioned that there are cyber threats from states as well, and the first country you identified is the regime from Beijing. Could you please tell us more about that? I did not necessarily mention Beijing deliberately. I was simply trying to say that in our cyber threat assessment that was published in the fall of 2024, which will run for 2 years, we clearly stated in that assessment that we are seeing some states being interested in Canada. Yes, there is China, but there are also other actors like Iran, Russia, and so on. With our cyber threats, in the assessment that was made at the time, we said that that is a very sophisticated actor, one that is very competent. It doesn't mean that even if we're talking about an actor from China, it's necessarily the states. There are also cyber criminals. In the same publication, we said that cyber criminals, the actions by cyber criminals are just as important as the other cyber threats we see against Canada and in the world. We have published many other documents, and we stated that there were many actors, and that is part of what we do to make sure that Canada is protected and that essential infrastructures are protected as well. You said some actors are not necessarily states, but when it's a totalitarian state, it's difficult to know who an autonomous actor is or one that is not tied to the state, particularly the regime of Peking, of Beijing. You know, I was trying not to identify a country because I don't want to stigmatize Canadians from that country. So our problem is the regime in Beijing. But let's not forget that we are very concerned on this side of the House by the Prime Minister's visit to the Beijing regime. And it would appear that all our concerns we have when it comes to cybersecurity and human rights were ignored. It's unfortunate. We are very concerned by that approach. But I don't want to question you on that. That was politically speaking. Mr. Rochon, when responding to a country, you said that this was teamwork. You have 3 entities here in Canada. The Communications Security Establishment, Shared Services, Treasury Board. My question, Mr. Goulet, do you believe that these 3 entities work together, or do they work in silos? And this, I'm talking about efficiency. I'm not blaming anyone. And given that technology evolves very rapidly, are there any improvements that could be made to ensure that information is better shared? Thank you for the question. Without any hesitation, we have realized that there is great cooperation between the entities. It doesn't mean that there is no room for improvement. And this is something we've stated in our report. There are projects that are delayed and that are very important for our cybersecurity needs. But clearly, there is good collaboration between the three entities. What could be improved, in your opinion, Mr. Rochon? Or maybe what else could be done to make sure that you are better, improve your efficiency? Let me start by thanking you for the question. There's always room for improvement, especially when we talk about information sharing. We have sophisticated people working in all the three agencies. It's not only today that we're thinking about bringing together everyone to resolve problems. Sometimes our policies require that if an incident is identified in a department, immediately they have to report it to the Cybersecurity Center. From there, the Cybersecurity Center starts their investigations. I think that we can do better to bring together everyone so that we are better informed. There's something that hasn't been mentioned today. Access to private information. If there's private information that is involved, you need to bring in the Privacy Commissioner. So we need to carry out exercises to make sure that everyone understands their role and responsibility and make sure that we're working together. Thank you very much.
Minutes, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to address, I think we need to keep the fact that canola farmers or fish farmers or fisher people in Atlantic Canada can trade with the country from cybersecurity. I'm not sure the two are connected. We do need to strengthen not only cybersecurity but economic trade. I will start off, I think this is the first time I've ever uttered the words because of a security threat in Newfoundland and Labrador against Newfoundland Health Services, or Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services. But I was the chair of the Cabinet Committee on that, so I have some understanding, and that's the first time I've ever said that publicly because we were advised never to say that. As parliamentarians, we're probably a target for bad actors. I will say that there are bad actors, both nation states and organizations that profit, very well organized organizations. So keeping in mind as well the balance between the public's right to know what's happening and our nation's security. I think we have to be careful in the questions we ask here as well, because this is very serious business, the work that you undertake. We do need to ensure that we address the weak links. I have two questions, and maybe Mr. Rochon, I'll direct this question at you. The Purple Team, how are we ensuring that this group of professionals are able to stay ahead of a system that changes very quickly, hour by hour, maybe minute by minute, as quick as we put defenses in place to protect our information security, our cyber security measures? They are working to try to get around those measures.
Thank you for the question, and therein lies the rub in terms of the challenge that we have on a daily basis is staying ahead of the sophisticated threat actors. One of the members today mentioned artificial intelligence. As much as we're excited about the use of artificial intelligence for good, you could imagine that malicious actors are going to be using artificial intelligence for bad. So I'd like to distinguish between the Purple Team, which is very much still in pilot project format. It's something that we've just launched. And the initiative there is we were relying on departments and agencies to self-report on the fact that they've put in place all of the measures and defenses that we've advocated for in our policies and in our cyber strategy and in our vulnerability programs, et cetera. The Purple Team is actually going in without them knowing, without a department or an agency knowing, to actually check in on them and seeing if those defenses are actually up to snuff. And we do so in partnership with, of course, Shared Services Canada and CSE, who have the expertise and understand where those vulnerabilities might be. So as those things come to light, we are able to test and discover those gaps further. But to your question specifically about how do we stay ahead of the sophistication, I think that'd be better suited for my colleague, Mr. Gupta, who I think releases an annual, or is it every 2 years now, the cyber threat report. CSE is constantly looking at the sophistication that's occurring and is tailoring their services and their defenses and their sensor work to actually counter that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So very important to us is actually staying ahead of the threat. It does change all the time, and as we lock down certain areas and other areas become the target of threat actors, and that's exactly what we see on a daily basis. To stay ahead of the groups, yes, we have Purple Team, where Treasury Board brings in, industry first-class experts to come in and see if we detect them and others detect them as well, which is an important exercise. The Chief had mentioned earlier about the collaboration right across CSE and with our Five Eyes partners as well. We are tracking threat actors right around the globe all the time, trying to figure out what their next techniques are going to be, what exploitation efforts they're going to actually conduct, and we're actually implementing defenses for this. We host innovation workshops, not just with the best in industry, right across Canada and around the world. For example, Geet Week, which is hosted annually, which includes members of critical infrastructure, banks, telcos, et cetera, as well as security companies, cloud service providers, where we all come and actually try to figure out what those next challenges are, but we also do this in the classified side as well, with basically the best in the world in terms of cyber defenders, trying to figure out what those threats are and how we can actually circumvent them. So intelligence informed, definitely, staying at the latest edge of technology in terms of being able to find threats that are out there from a threat intelligence perspective, but also building the latest technologies as well. You mentioned AI, very important for us to put out advice and guidance as to how to secure AI and how organizations can safely adopt AI. But also we make extensive use of AI internally as well, just making sure that we can scale just as threat actors are scaling as well. So on the edge for technology development, but also consuming threat intelligence from ourselves, from commercial entities, and from our partners to make sure that we understand what's there. And even still, you may find some gaps, and suddenly we find something new because that's the world. It's changing all the time.
Thank you very much. That is your time, Mr. Osborne. I believe we'll come back to you later. Suivant, c'est Mr. Lemire, s'il vous plaît, pour 2 minutes.
Mr. Lemire, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Thank you, Chair. In its many reports, the Auditor General said that there's great use of subcontractors in the computer area, and they could have access to sensitive information without having necessary authorizations and the necessary training. Ottawa spends about $3 billion in computer services. In 2022, it was about 7,700 subcontractors working in the computer domain. So that's huge. Maybe Mr. Jones will be the best placed person to answer my question, or someone else. But I think that we are very vulnerable when it comes to foreign interference. We need security guarantees. So what are the security guarantees required by government? Are there verifications carried out to make sure that people receiving work goes to the right people and not to subcontractors? Have you adjusted your working methods to give contracts, making sure that it's not foreigners who are positioned in at-risk countries? Let's not forget that the global order is changing, but the countries we can trust are limited. I can only talk about my context. When we recruit subcontractors and contractors, first of all, to access our services, you need an account with us. We have to check the identity of the person who will have access to our system and to our information. Secondly, we are constantly assessing our verification systems and securing information. So we want to make sure that people only have access to the information they need for their work. We have security processes that are implemented before we grant access to our facilities. We have such systems to identify the identity of people and to find out the country where the person is working. There's also a procurement system. We have clauses in the contract that request information and security clearances through our security clearance process. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming today, and Happy New Year. My first question would be for the Chief, Ms. Carolyn Xavier. So in a quote that you had said earlier in some documents, you had said that the rise of AI-enabled cyber threats poses significant challenges to our democratic process. What countries would you identify as bad actors for that?
I believe that the quote that you're talking to is from our document of the threats to democratic processes, I suspect. And so as we do on almost every 2 years as well, put out a publication that's called Threats to Democratic Processes, where we assess what we learn from a global perspective. What are the threats that could be of concern, especially if one's going to have a general election or municipal or provincial elections. And so we look at it purely from the cyber threat activity targeting these elections. And so in general, we tend to see actions such as DDoSes, mis and disinformation, manipulation of online systems, and things of that nature. And in that,
Sorry, just I have limited time. So you're saying it's global. There's no specific countries that you would pinpoint?
So what I was going to say is that in that threat to democratic processes, we have highlighted that Russia and China are most attributed cyber threat activity targeting foreign elections, and that is on a global stage. Important to take that note.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your answer. Thank you. My next question is for Mr. Gupta. You were also quoted as saying malicious actors are increasingly leveraging AI to enhance the scale and sophistication of their activities, including those that threaten our democratic institutions. Could I get your opinion or your expert opinion on what countries would those be as well?
I mean, I would refer to the exact same document that the Chief mentioned, which is our threats to democratic processes. I mean, that's from a democratic perspective. At the same point in time, I mean, AI is democratizing this capability, and I think that more and more countries will continue to stand up the ability because it's easier and easier for countries to be able to take advantage of it.
And what would you agree with the Chief then? It would be China and Russia would probably be the two main, amongst others, obviously. I'm sure. I fully respect that it is a global issue, but I'm trying to pinpoint on a few things. So as a conservative, our parties always has had concerns about these issues, and I want to commend you both for doing a great job, first and foremost. Now, as the Prime Minister looks to make new trade deals, it seems he's aggressively moving very quickly towards China. And more importantly, I don't want to use it's China, but let's, for more important communication methods, let's call it the Chinese Communist Party. That's the real concern, as opposed to China and Chinese people. It's the Communist Party that governs that country. As a conservative, and many of my colleagues here, we're advised not to use things like TikTok, which 99% of MPs don't use for security reasons, which I'm sure you know all too well about. And Canadians can't buy Huawei phones. That the previous government addressed that, and I agreed with that. Now, there's a big concern about Chinese EVs. Not only will it be a threat to the auto sector in Ontario, but on a security level, Mr. Gupta, how do you feel, and what would you address? Is there a concern, and is there a threat to bringing in 50,000 Chinese EVs into our market?
From a security perspective, I mean, EVs are similar to other technology platforms. I mean, we've given out advice and guidance in terms of the increasing digitalization of critical infrastructure in general. I think that's something we need to keep a view on right across the board because everything is becoming connected to the internet. With respect to EVs, we have, supply chain guidance. We have national cyber threat assessments. We have all those things that we publish regularly on our website, and I think that we continue to communicate these threats to Canadians. Supply chain is one of the documents that we have in there as well. We also have advice and guidance as to the secure communications of vehicles as well that we post as well. So all of that advice and guidance, I think it was mentioned earlier, you need layered defenses, but you need to understand exactly, what situation you're actually deploying the technologies in and what mitigations you put in place. For, applications that we recommend that are, perhaps not as secure as you'd be considering, there's mitigations you can put in place, such as turning off Bluetooth and doing different sorts of things.
There be a heightened risk, though, in fact, that we can't use TikTok and Huawei, and some of our journalists and MPs have to use burner phones when they go visit the Chinese Communist Party. Is there a higher threat to those EVs, or is it standard?
Right across the board, we assess risk as a number of different elements. Part of it is supply chain. So you do look at laws of nations as it comes in. You look at technology and the quality and implementation of software, and then you look at legal and reputational risks as well. That's our typical assessment of products. Putting all those things together gives you a general risk. So you'll have products that are developed certain ways that will have vulnerabilities based on technical deficiencies. You'll have.
Thank you. That is the time.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
I appreciate
Keurig.
your
So
answers.
up next is Ms. Tester-Dirksen. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and welcome, everyone. It's great to be back. I certainly take my colleagues' concerns to heart with respect to trade agreements with foreign countries. I know it's not anything that's new. I know, actually, the Conservative government back in 2014 under Stephen Harper negotiated the FIPA agreement with China without any public debate and quite quietly and efficiently. So it's something that's been brewing for a long time. It's something we have to keep our minds to if we're going to diversify our trade, and it's something that I'm glad we have a team like you in place to help guide us through. So getting back to the report, I want to note the staggering numbers, and that's really what caught my eye at the start when we're talking about trillions of different interactions from a cybersecurity perspective. But I do want to maybe have you comment on the levels of threat, because I know not all of them are actual attacks. I presume many of them are innocuous, not to make light of cybersecurity threats, but the hierarchy of characterization for the threats. And there's incidents, there's events, and then there's attacks. Could one of you, whoever you feel is most best placed to answer that, just comment on that?
Sure, I can begin. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, the internet weather is, active. You're being nonstop hit by reconnaissance. This is basically the equivalent of, people coming by and wiggling your doorknobs and trying your windows, and that is happening nonstop, and millions and millions of times a second, nonstop. So just to be aware of that. So some of the protections that Mr. Jones had talked about in terms of, blocking that initial set of reconnaissance, as we call it, or basically those doorknob turnings or window checks, those are happening nonstop. So those blocks happen, and those are in the trillions. Then there's the protections that we'd have in terms of, known threats. Anything that we know about that's a threat, we actually put in blocks to try to block those things from happening, and that gets into billions of blocks as well. Then there'll be other threats that actually get through, and they run through analytics, and we start to find out that, hey, this thing plus this thing plus this thing makes it look suspicious and worrisome. What do we have to do with that? And then you're into like tens of thousands, and then some of that is actually handled by automated analytics that will go and block things as we're sleeping 24/7. Within our Security Operations Center, which is Tier 2 for the Government of Canada, but we're looking at close to 180 different departments. From all of that automated machinery that's happening and blocking millions of things a day, then we get down to maybe a few hundred alerts that actually have to be looked at by humans, and then we look at those, triage them, and then every single day, if you look at 1,100 incidents for the Government of Canada, you have about 6 or 7 of those that turn legit. So every single day, we're actually working on real legit incidents with our partners here as a team. So when you say cybersecurity is a team sport, we see each other too often, weekends, evenings, all the time, and every single day there's about 6 or 7 things that we're actively chasing that become legit incidents that are typically mitigated, but sometimes, they go further than others, and we have to work hard together to be able to prevent them.
Perhaps I could just jump on to what Rajiv just said. We're not used to calling each other Mr. and Mrs. because we've worked together so closely for the last 20 years. But Pat can talk about this in a little more detail, but There isn't a minute that goes by where there's not a government department under denial of service attack. Pat's team right now will be mitigating that with our automated defenses. You almost never notice them because of the defenses, what we've layered in. And as we go through, this is where we talk about the best available commercial defenses. So Shared Services Canada is responsible for deploying that, making sure that we maintain that, keep it up to date, and continually modernize the commercial side of things. And then when it gets past those, because there are threat actors that are able to get past that, that's where we turn to our colleagues at the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity and the Communications Security Establishment. And that's what I would say is the secret sauce of the Government of Canada. It's the fact that we have this continuum. It is not separate things. It goes together, and I think that was actually one of the key points in the Auditor General's report is you bring this together and you bring a comprehensive approach to cybersecurity. But there is not a minute that goes by where we are not suffering some sort of denial of service attack from all around the world.
Thank you so much. And you're quite right. I noted in the Auditor General's report that the strategy was found to be, quote, sound and comprehensive. So congratulations on that. I believe, though, the critique from the Auditor General is that we have these tools in place, we have these systems in place, but the uptake from all organizations is not 100%. So I want to move into a question surrounding that. Are there policy obstacles to these departments taking advantage of these tools? Is it a logistical issue? I know there might be a perception that it might infringe on the independence of a particular agency. Could you comment a little more on that and how we can resolve that issue?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. I think the first thing is the Shared Services Canada mandate is specified in an order in council, and that is 44 departments that must use our service, particularly on connectivity. That is then optionally provided to a number of other entities, including, if they wish, Crown corporations and others. And as you rightfully noted, there are organizations that have opted out for independence. Primarily, if you look at the judicial branch of our kind of, and then the parliamentary branch has also opted out of Shared Services Canada's for the reasons of independence, as you pointed out. Now, they've done other things to compensate for that, but those were the primary things. And then many departments have chosen to not come with SSC. There are a few reasons. Number one, it does cost more. If you're just going to run standard commercial internet access, the commercial defenses we've layered on cost money. And if you run without those, you're running at risk, but you've made a choice. You might not be able to afford it. That's what the investment in the small departments and agencies is seeking to overcome. So funding so that they can come on to the sensors that they couldn't have afforded without that type of thing. But it really is that it is not a mandatory, it is an optional service for most departments and agencies that they get to make a choice about. And my department works on cost recovery, so they have to be able to pay the bill.
Thank you very much. So it is my intention to get through another 2 full rounds, and that will consist of, we'll give the government two additional slots, the opposition 2 additional slots for each round, puis le bloc une tour aussi 2 fois. Suivant, c'est Madame Kuzi pour 5 minutes.
Madam Kuzi, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'll start by saying that I'm very concerned that this government refers to any cyber attack as innocuous. This is the security of our nation, which is further compromised. I'm very concerned in terms of the new level of the relationship, which is being developed by this Prime Minister. That's very concerning to me. So continuing with that, APT 31 that hacked parliamentarians was linked to China's intelligence service, as I indicated in the first round. In light of this funding, how can the CSC provide a guarantee that intelligence shared with China will not compromise Canadian cyber defense security?
Important, Mr. Chair, to recognize that no matter what amount of cyber defenses we put in place, which we have some great quality defense in place, we can never guarantee zero cyber incidences. Working in cyber defense is a team sport, one that we're doing with all the people at this table, but in addition, an individual role has to be played when one is doing what it needs to do to protect itself. There is no intelligence sharing that is underway with regards to the CCP or the PRC. We do have we do work on a global stage with many intelligence entities as well as international bodies. That is part of what we do in the cyber defense space because it is so important to learn from others how cyber defense works. I won't speak to the intent of the Prime Minister. I'll leave that for you all to discuss with him directly. But what I would say is that the role that CSC plays in terms of foreign intelligence collection is very important, in particular when decisions are made by government so that they could be informed in terms of what the intent is of others. And so those are the insights that we provide in the work that we do, in addition to all the learnings we do from the many incidents that happen on a global scale and the sharing that we do with international bodies, including our Five Eyes, and the way in which we function, both domestically and internationally.
Thank you very much for that response. I'll also add that, Prime Minister Harper had the capacity to manage our relationship to the South, a capacity that this current Prime Minister does not. And that's why he's been forced to go and kowtow to dictators around this world. So I just want to make that very clear. Harper had the capacity to manage that relationship. This Prime Minister does not. And that's why he's forced into the hands of dictators, as we have seen throughout this week. Can you confirm whether any technology produced by the Beijing state-owned companies, as my colleague has alluded to, will be blocked from being embedded into the Canadian cybersecurity operations? And I'm talking about the daily ones as well, of course.
As has been mentioned from my colleagues, part of the work we do is ensuring that any tools that we use in the Cyber Defense of Canada are tools that we trust and are minimizing any of the vulnerabilities that we're concerned about. And they go through rigorous testing, rigorous assessments, and as part of the procurement contracts, we outline clear conditions that must exist. So no matter what products we will use, no matter which country they come from, this forms the basis of the work that's required to be done, especially if we at CSC are going to use them, because we want to ensure that we continue to keep our systems secure. And so it matters to pay attention to the supply chain, as was mentioned earlier, and who are the potential contractors, and they have to still undergo a very rigorous process when it comes to cyber, when it comes to security, personnel security, especially if they're going to be working and employed by the communications security establishment.
Thank you. So every one of these 20,000 EVs will be evaluated for potential malware. Is this what I'm hearing?
This is not what I'm saying, Mr. Chair. What I am saying is that the question that was asked is whether or not we are assessing anything that's going to be used by the communication security establishment, and my answer to that is yes, we make sure to assess that. What I would add is that as part of the community that you see at this table, our jobs will be to ensure that we give our best advice to government when it comes to whatever systems they are going to use. The other thing I would add is that we work with critical infrastructure sectors, including the transportation sector, and they're the ones that will give the advice, I assume, to the government as to what is the best way to do the implementation of any EV vehicles. We have put advice out, as Mr. Gupta said earlier, with regards to connected devices, and we stand behind that advice, and we'll continue to learn and improve our advice as we get more and more informed. This is where Bill C-8 is really important, Mr. Chair, because one of the sectors in that is the transportation sector. And so if that bill passes, then we'll have a better understanding of what are the vulnerabilities. But in the meantime, we continue to work and build really great relationships with the transportation sector. And we have governance bodies what allows us to better understand what's going on there.
Thank you very much. That is the time. Up next, back to Ms. Yip. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Say that Mr. Harper was not negotiating with President Trump. And Prime Minister Carney is a pragmatist, and he's able to see that our economy really needs to be diversified. Now I'll go back to the report, and I'd like to ask the question to Mr. Jones and Ms. Xavier. This is in regards to the AG's report indicating that there was not a comprehensive, up-to-date inventory of all government IT devices, and such as laptops, smartphones, and servers. And while Shared Services Canada began to work to address this in 2017. The project has not been completed and is expected to continue until at least 2027. Why is this important, and why is it taking so long?
Thank you for the question. I think it's important to note the complex environment that we operate in. And as I was discussing one of the last questions, which is the complexity of the number of departments that are involved. So a number of entities are responsible for managing their own inventory of goods. The other piece is when shared services was created, it was a mishmash of technology that got thrown together and handed over to this new agency saying, well, figure it out. And the agency didn't invest in its tooling at the beginning. There wasn't money to do that. It was really, the money was to just keep it running and hope that we could do that. And we managed to make some good progress in things like cyber defense with our colleagues at CSE. But that is why EVAS is back on track. We engaged with we had to work with the vendor. There are some things around, needed to make sure that the software and the packages that we bought were working securely. The pandemic did delay the procurement process. And at the same time, this is a space where the market is evolving very quickly. So we have shifted from a very static project management process that is long-term and very much into a very agile project delivery process where it is about minimum viable product, rolling out quickly to accelerate that. And that's why we've gone from 0 deployments to 35,000 desktops so far. It'll be at 87,000 desktops by the end of this year. And so starting to fill that gap. But there are over 100 departments and agencies that we have to work with. That is one of the complicating factors. The second piece for us is also how do we make sure that that information is available to those departments so they can see what their users have. And it is an environment that there's very few organizations in the world that work the way we do because of the vertical silos that, when Mr. Rochon was talking about the authorities, but then we've got this horizontal organization that does infrastructure. So there are things we had to work with the vendors on. Those have all been overcome now. So now it is about, not to trivialize this, lather, rinse, repeat. Get the deployment, get into the department, get it deployed, move to the next one, get it deployed, and do that on a priority basis to get that visibility.
I don't know that I have much more to add to what Scott Jones has already shared. We are working hand in glove, and we are, with regards to the recommendation that the OAG provided related to identifying a new platform. This is work we're doing in conjunction with our Treasury Board and Shared Services colleagues, and we will though, even without the platform, continue to at least provide a minimum viable product, as was mentioned by Scott. And as was mentioned by Dom earlier, the importance of continuing to build the relationships through tabletop exercises and is really where it matters, because it doesn't matter what systems you have ultimately physically tracking these things if we're not doing a good job of ensuring that we're keeping that communication channel open, which is very much what we've worked on and improved and learned from in terms of the OAG's report.
What are the biggest barriers for your organizations to have cybersecurity defense sensors on all the devices?
If Treasury Board wants to take that one, because there aren't any barriers.
Well, I think it goes, thank you for the question. It goes to one of the earlier questions in terms of are the barriers legal or are the barriers logistical and financial? And I think Mr. Jones answered it adequately earlier, saying there's a little bit of both. There's a barrier in that we can impose our rules on those entities that fall under the Financial Administration Act's Schedules 1 and 2. Schedule 3 fall outside of that, outside of our authorities. As a result, we cannot mandate Crown corporations to use CSE sensors or indeed use SSC services. However, on a voluntary basis, we have reached out to all of these entities, and we're looking for them to adopt our cybersecurity practices because, of course, they're world leading, and why wouldn't you? As a result, I think that little by little we've started to address that gap. Nevertheless, when that deals with the legal side of things, on the logistical financial side of things, again, as Mr. Jones pointed out, We need to understand exactly what the internet presence and technological presence is of some of these organizations and how are they set up. And if they want us to then protect them, what happens if an incident occurs with one of those organizations? It costs time, it costs effort, resources, and we need to put in place the appropriate cost recovery mechanisms in order to be able to ensure that we're able to address them.
Thank you very much. Suivant, c'est Michel Lemire encore pour 2 minutes 30.
Mr. Lemire, 2.5 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. Madam Xavier, I have a question for you. First of all, when there's an international trip, like the Prime Minister's trip to China with his delegation some 10 days ago, we know that journalists were told not to use their telephones. They were told to use phones that they could discard. Of course, there are security verifications, and sometimes when MPs travel, we are given mobile phones that we can use for the trip so that foreign states do not have access to our information as members of parliament. During that trip, there was an agreement to import Chinese electric vehicles. If I use my parliament smartphone and I connect it to through Bluetooth to a Chinese electric vehicle, do you have any recommendation that we avoid doing that? Will I be placing at risk strategic parliamentary information, making them available to the Chinese regime? Thank you for the question. It's very difficult to provide a concrete answer because this is a theory. What I would say, let's take the example of TikTok that the government asked us to remove from our phones, something I've never used. For example, Huawei telephones that we were advised not to use. So this is not theory. These are not theories. Taking the examples that you mentioned, we always recommend, whether it be TikTok or any other application, the advice we give is that you should be careful when it comes to privacy, irrespective of the foreign country you're visiting. You have specifically mentioned Beijing or China. That being said, we will give you that advice irrespective of the country. You have to pay attention to the laws in that country. Are you at ease with the laws? What network would your data be circulating on? We do not know all the telecommunications corporations in the world, so there are things that individuals have to do when they're traveling. You have to make sure that you understand the laws, you understand the challenges. I'm talking about this. As citizens, with the devices that we're going to use and connect to other sources like a vehicle, take maybe an American vehicle, a hybrid vehicle from Japan. I am not as scared when I'm dealing with those countries, as is the case with China. We know that some other a country like China may want to have access to our data. If I were to connect to their vehicles, could they have access? Whenever you connect your device, there's a risk, irrespective of the country, because we are dealing with the digital world. And with the digital world and with cybersecurity, once you are connected to a device, you are at risk. But that being said, here in Canada, we work very closely with telecommunications companies. We have a great relationship with some countries, and they also work with us. They have a clear understanding of the issues, irrespective of the cyber attack, and they do whatever they will to protect our systems. If you are using their networks, I'm sorry, Mr. Lemire, you will have another 2.5 minutes later. Mr. Lemire, I need to stop you now. I'm sorry. You will have another turn in a few minutes. Mr. Detel, for 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let's continue the conversation on cars. I own a vehicle. Many of the people who are listening to us own vehicles. And I'm proud of the fact that I've been driving an electric vehicle for a while. But it's an older vehicle that I received without government grants. So now let's talk about electric vehicles, because the issues raised by Mr. Leclerc, Mr. Carrick, and Mr. Lemaire are very important. Electric vehicles are primarily computers with an engine and with wheels. So they're like computers. So the heart of the issue is a computer. Have you already experienced cyber attacks regarding the current electric vehicles, be they built in South Korea, Japan, Europe, and so on? Before we go to China, maybe we could also get some from France, because they exist. Have there been threats, cybersecurity threats, targeting vehicles? I can't say whether or not there were specific attacks targeting electric vehicles. But based on all the information we have and the research we've done, as you have said, Mr. Chair, we do know that an electric vehicle is like a computer. We understand computers. Computers may have vulnerabilities. If they don't have a certain quantity of layers of security embedded, this adds to their vulnerability. We are not a regulatory agency, but we are going to be working hand in glove with Transport Canada and other sectors that will be implementing measures to make sure that the vehicles work appropriately. We are simply asking that we pay attention to anything that is connected, be it an electric vehicle or a computer, because when we talk about cybersecurity, something that we are experts in, yes, we will look into the vulnerabilities that exist. But to your knowledge, vehicles have been working with computers for 20 years. So have car owners been targets of cyber attacks simply because their vehicles could be tracked using surveillance cameras? Have they been targeted for spies, for espionage? I can't say that I'm able to answer your question with a categorical yes or no, because all threats in Canada are not automatically reported to the Cyber Center. There's no obligation to share all incidents with us. If there's incidents may have occurred targeting electrical vehicles, but maybe we have not been informed. We carry out general research. We work together with other international partners. We have a good idea of what can be done. Anything to add?
To the Cyber Center? So that's how we would measure.
About the cars.
At the same time, we have done workshops to understand the new technologies. Just like other software, there's vulnerabilities in all software, and comme vous avez dit, it's a computer on wheels, right? So there are vulnerabilities. We would expect them to be targeted. As soon as they're targeted, they will find vulnerabilities, and just like other software, they will continue to find them. So it's just a matter of time, I would say, right across. And we will continue to look at the technologies involved in vehicles and continue to add our advice and guidance. But it's something we have done. And for example, we did this at a Geek Week workshop with industry partners just to understand what those weaknesses are and how to formulate appropriate advice and guidance and to make sure that Canadians are aware. So we will continue to work on that. But the expectation would be layered software comes with vulnerabilities, comes with exploitation eventually, whether it's cyber criminals or states or whoever, but basically it's an opportunity just like other digital technologies.
30 secondes.
Merci beaucoup pour ces précisions.
Thank you for those clarifications. But you understand that in the world we live in today, with our vehicles, we leave traces everywhere. There are cameras. It's possible to identify someone. We can even track down a vehicle abroad, and these impacts affect all Canadians in their daily lives. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Dertel.
You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Just want to go back in my previous question. I was hoping to get to another. I talked about addressing the weak links So on 2 occasions, we heard the order in council impacting 44 departments and Schedule 3 with agencies being asked on a voluntary basis. So talking about weak links on such an important issue as cybersecurity, Canada's sovereignty in terms of national defence, this would fit into that, I would anticipate, in some degrees. What are your recommendations to us as members of the Public Accounts Committee in terms of going beyond a voluntary basis with the agencies and commissions of government? Hopefully they would take your advice on a voluntary basis and implement best standards, but there's no requirement for them to do so. So do you have advice to us, or are there things that we can recommend to ensure that they follow or are required to follow best practices as well?
So first off, thank you for the question, and I'll mention that this is not a new issue. I believe it was flagged by the National Security Committee of Parliamentarians some 5 years ago now. So it's something that we've been discussing and looking at. And the reason why we haven't found a specific recommendation to resolve it is because it's complicated. Complicated for a couple of reasons. On the legislative front, if you want to add Schedule 3 entities that have to follow our policies, it becomes difficult for agents of parliament, for crown corporations or organizations that don't fall 100% under the federal government purview. Making them beholden to our policies is a difficult thing to do. So there's also reasons of national security. There are exemptions to our policies for very good reasons. And so sometimes the voluntary route is necessary. The other aspect that is complicated and that I mentioned as well is there's a cost associated with it. There are possibly some very small entities that have a very complicated way of managing their systems, or perhaps maybe even an antiquated way. Maybe they're using legacy systems. And so imposing our cybersecurity sensors and technology is going to come at a cost. And in particular, if we go into a small entity and all of a sudden turn on our sensors and find a whole bunch of things that are happening there, that's going to require resources to clean it up. Again, all of this has a significant cost, and it will take away from resources that are being applied to already the 100 departments and agencies that we're already vigilant in looking at, and it'll pull some of those resources towards some of these smaller entities and trying to resolve some of these, closing these gaps. So this is what we've been discussing now for the better part of several years and trying to come up with the best solution. And so far, the best solution has been to reach out to these entities, which we've done. We've written to them, both my colleagues, Potsy Duncan as the Chief Information Security Officer, has been writing to these organizations in collaboration with CSE. And in some cases, we've actually figured out a way of deploying our sensors and bringing them inside the tent. And so little by little, we're trying to close those gaps. And that's the best approach that we've found so far.
If I could add, just because what Mr. Rochon just shared, I would add that we've actually seen progress in the adoption of the sensors, especially since the NSI COP report. And so this conversation may potentially also add the opportunity of people wanting to see how important this is. So we've done a really, I'd say, a full court press with some of these crown corporations for them to better understand the value of that. And I would say that when Crown Corporation undergoes an incident and shares with their sectoral colleagues their experience, is something we encourage a lot. All of a sudden, we also end up having more calls because people start to learn and benefit from the practices of others.
The implementation of the SEAM system into the overall cybersecurity strategy for federal institutions, are there specific goals or milestones that you are looking to achieve?
There are a few things that we're looking to measure. So the first one is cost effectiveness. I realize this is one of those areas where we would say you should spend whatever you need to protect yourself, but the fact is that we need to maintain within a budget, and how do we leverage every dollar to the most effective way possible, and that's something that we're constantly looking at to say, how do we do better? Part of that is the fact that because of where we sit, we can leverage the volume of the Government of Canada to negotiate better prices. So in some of the things that we've talked about, we've actually significantly reduced the cost because of the volume. Buying 500,000 of something is much cheaper than buying one per unit type of thing. So there's cost effectiveness is one. The other one is that we maintain the tight integration with CSE. If I'm deploying something commercially, I want it to free up CSE's analytical time so they can concentrate on the way the threat is evolving. And the same thing, that we want to make sure that we're automating as much as possible. So how much automation we're putting in place, how much tooling we have to be able to increase the productivity. We do not have an unlimited security operations center to continue on top of these things. So automation, building things in, expecting our vendors to do that contractually. Those are all pieces that we look to leverage in for measures. But
Thank you. I'm afraid that is the time, Mr. Osborne, but we'll be back to your side for two more. Just, Mr. Rochon, just a point of clarification. When you talk about entities, that was referring to crowns primarily?
Yes, Schedule 3, primarily Crown corporations.
I'm going to pinpoint a question on this. Would you like to see strengthened requirements for crowns to follow directions from your group?
So personally speaking, I think that would be a good thing, yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'll let other members follow up on that if they choose to do so. But we're going to begin our fourth last round. I'm going to cut the minutes down so we don't go too much over it. I'm going to have a few questions here from the analysts at the end. So government and opposition members will have 4 minutes each. Mr. Keurig, you'll kick us off for 4 minutes, please.
Thank you. So I want to continue along with some questioning that I had earlier, but I want to address a few things. In this panel here, we've heard that alluded to that former Prime Minister Harper did trade with China and the canola. Now, canola, I understand, the former Prime Minister Harper, it did not have AI cyber threats like we do today, and 50,000 EV cars weren't in question coming into our country. So I want to address that. And EVs is a whole other topic. So today we're talking about cybersecurity, and that's what we're going to stick to. So I have something here from the National Cybersecurity Threat Assessment 2025-26, and it says the PRC conducts cyber operations against Canadian interests to serve high-level political and commercial objectives, including espionage, intellectual property theft, malignant influence, and transnational repression. Among our adversaries, the PRC cyber program's scale, tradecraft, and ambition in cyberspace are second to none. I find it concerning that we're fielding proper questions that Canadians want to know, and the government, representatives from the other side, are not. This is a real threat. At the end of the day, if the Prime Minister didn't go onto the world stage and tell the whole world he's going to do business with the Chinese Communist Party with open arms, we wouldn't be asking these questions today. So, on that, I have a direct question to the Chief, please. Is Canada ready to have an open arms approach to the Chinese Communist Party on a cyber security level? Or do we need to have a more heightened or robust or level up to keep Canada secure?
Say what I would have said even before this conversation that's being had today, that Canada is not immune to the threats of hostile state actors, cyber criminals, hacktivists. This is what our National Cyber Threat Assessment has stated.
I agree with you, ma'am, but in light of the Prime Minister going on a world stage and virtue signaling that China, the Chinese Communist Party is where we're going to move forward, things have changed. And I'm only speaking on behalf of the people who call into my office. It is a concern. There's lots of reports. Even the former Liberal government stated that we can't use Huawei phones and this, that, and identified, and you yourself have identified China as one of, amongst many. Surely we have to have a heightened sensitivity based on the direction that we're going. Yet, I'm not asking for concrete answers. I know this just happened in a week or two, but this has to be formulating in your minds to keep Canada safe. That's why I asked that question. This is a clear path forward to do business with the Chinese Communist Party, not only on canola and maybe they buy our LNG, which we can all get our heads around, but there are severe cybersecurity risks on what Chinese goods we're going to bring in or Chinese Communist Party goods we're going to bring in. So things are changing, and you are the expert, thank you, and I do recognize that, but as the calls I'm getting, things have changed from 2 weeks ago. Are we ready to deal with that, or what steps do we take to better deal with that?
I think needing to be ready as an institution, as a government, as a country is something we always need to be doing because the threats that we see are constantly emerging and pivoting. And so part of what we do at the Communications Security Establishment is prepare for that. We analyze that and we take it from what we learn from the foreign intelligence perspective as well as what we learn from the cyber defense perspective. And so the work that I do with my Treasury Board colleagues as well as my Shared Services colleague is really important to ensure that the Government of Canada systems continue to be prepared to defend against any threat. It is factual that we see the threats evolving. It's factual that we see that threat actors are pivoting and using artificial intelligence on a daily basis to be able to do what they need to do. But we see it from cyber criminals as well as state actors. And so the Defense of Canada is something that I am proud to be part of, being part of the defense portfolio, reporting to the Minister of Defense. And it is clear that in the work that we're doing in that posture with the investments we've been given, we're going to continue to modernize the IT systems, going to continue to ensure that our data is protected, leveraging information assurance mechanisms and crypt technology, to be able to continue to ensure that whatever data we're housing will be protected.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that is your time.
Thank you
Going
for your
back to Ms. Tester-Dirksen, please, for 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'm really enjoying the conversation. It's great. I do want to note that none of us is underplaying the security risks that we face as a country, and certainly all countries do in this changing landscape of technology. And I do want to address a concern that my colleague Ms. Cusey raised with respect to the use of my use of the word innocuous. What I was referring to when I look at the definition of the cybersecurity event, the actual definition is events do not necessarily mean a security breach. An example would be a user such as myself logging into the system at an unusual time. Of course, we have to treat all events as potential attacks. I understand that, but a large number do end up being innocuous, and I'm glad that you are hyper vigilant even to those innocuous events, making sure that we're properly protected. So thank you for that. I want to continue along my line of questioning. I was getting into the crown corporations that are not taking up the tools that are available to them, and I want to ask the Auditor General, witnesses if I could, that some of those crown corps, like I said, felt that using this was compromising their integrity to be independent. I would describe that as a type of mindset, and I'd like to know from the Auditor General's Department, do you find that this type of mindset is, for lack of a better word, harmful to our ability to properly protect ourselves in a cybersecurity context?
Thank you. I guess the best way I could answer this question is when it comes to independence, there are very few organizations that are as independent as the Office of the Auditor General, and we use these tools. In terms of crown corporations, I totally agree with my colleagues about the legislative structure. I would note that there are other options. In the Financial Administration Act, for example, ministers have the authority to direct crown corporations, and that's in Part 10 of the Financial Administration Act. So there might be other ways to get at this, but the factors that have been brought up as reasons why other organizations might not be willing to make a move, those are valid. They have to be overcome. Another example might be that you're using a third party to provide your IT services, and it's costly to have them engage with government organizations on things like this. So these are things that I think the government has to tackle. Your question about mindset, absolutely. I think every Canadian expects that government will do everything that it can. Government organizations across the board will do everything that they can to protect information and keep services going.
Okay, and I like your suggestions because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't actually see any recommendations in the report about how we would entice these crown corporations to take up these tools.
We didn't make recommendations directly in the report because it is a question of policy. However, I think what what we are talking about here is the importance of a clear picture across government organizations on what the threats are. I think the truth is, and my colleagues might be able to expand on this, but the truth is that the more they have visibility into what's happening at endpoints and also on networks of all organizations, the better they're equipped to help everyone.
Good. Okay. Excellent. So, and again, back to the Auditor General's team, I noticed in the preamble of your report that you note that an initiative to set up a cybersecurity collaboration platform and incident case management tool had not received funding. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I think I might have to ask one of my colleagues to expand on that, but I think the challenge at this point, or when we provided the report, was that the organization had to seek funding, and that hadn't been done yet. There has been some time that has passed since we finished our report, though. So.
Yeah, this was in the context of us moving forward with the procurement that I mentioned earlier. We're in the process of finalizing the contract for the security for the SIM, the Security Incident Event Management System, and that is, I don't want to. Procurement can always be unpredictable with challenges and some of the other pieces, but that is in its final stages right now. So to be able to proceed with that. So what was highlighted in the report has been moved on from, and on the EVAS side of things, that has been settled in. We're now at tens of thousands of deployments.
Thank you very much. Your time is up, I'm afraid. So, suivant, c'est Monsieur Lemire pour 2 minutes.
Mr. Lemire, you have 2 minutes. Thank you, Chair. As part of the new directive of digital sovereignty, Mr. Salomon, the minister in charge of AI, presents a framework that underscores the dangers if data is hosted abroad, for example, the United States. He talks about dependency on major organizations that manage data. I believe that here we have access to affordable renewable energy and we are able to host many servers, but clearly our strategy is not doing that. All our data is going to be hosted in the cloud. Maybe Mr. Jones is better positioned to answer me. How will the new strategy have an impact on the choices that are going to be made by the different departments in light of the famous Davos speech where the Prime Minister was skilled enough to avoid naming the United States and President Trump? Was he thinking about any vulnerabilities towards the United States? Mr. Trump may issue orders to Microsoft and disrupt all our computers that are connected to Microsoft, and this may interrupt all our work. Have you thought about the impacts that this could have? Yes, indeed. We have been thinking about that for many years because during the procurement process, we add security clauses, and there's also a security assessment process that is done by the communications security establishment when it comes to information protection. And we look into the qualifications of providers. We have also added other levels of security. For example, encryption for emails to protect sensitive information. We keep the key when we need to release information to providers. Lastly, it is important to ensure a balance between the capabilities of a system and the needs of a government and users when it comes to technology, the only thing that is absolutely secure is a closed computer when it's not working. So we always have to measure the risks that we have to face. I think my colleague has something to add. Thank you very much.
Susie for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. In December 2022, it was revealed that the RCMP had awarded a contract for radio frequency equipment to Sinclair Technologies, a company owned by Hytera Communications. Hytera is a Chinese telecommunications firm partly owned by the Chinese government, and it was blacklisted by the U.S. Federal Communications Commission in 2021 as an unacceptable risk to national security. The Department of Public Safety confirmed that the RCMP did not seek a risk assessment from the CSC before awarding the contract. Can anyone clarify as to if the Cabinet has deemed it a requirement to consult CSC before federal departments engage in contract with foreign suppliers for products used by our security agencies?
Maybe I'll just weigh in here, only because of some of my previous roles at the Department of Public Safety. I know that this would be something that would fall under the purview of the Investment Canada Act, not necessarily something that we would be discussing from a protection of Government of Canada systems and the cybersecurity of our systems. More so that there's a distinction to be made, I think, and a lot of the questions that have been asked today of us, Mr. Chair. When I mentioned that this is a team game, one of the members of our team isn't here, and that is public safety. They're very much responsible for cybersecurity outward-facing. The team that you see before you here today is the team responsible for securing systems within the federal government. And as I think Mrs. Xavier mentioned earlier, Bill C-8 is a bill that is advocating for specific cyber hygiene to be rolled out and implemented in four critical infrastructure sectors, namely transportation, finance, telecommunications, and energy. And I think if that bill comes to pass, a lot of the issues that were asked of us today, I think, will be clarified, because you'll have regulators in place that will impose cyber hygiene in these sectors in the private sector. So apologies if I didn't address the question specifically, but just wanted to point out that there's a distinction to be made between what's happening in society writ large here in Canada and cybersecurity for that, which falls under the purview of public safety, and protecting systems. Now, obviously, there are links between the two, but just wanted to point that out.
Mr. Jones, in April 2017, nearly 9 years ago, your organization began developing a security information and event management application, which was to be completed by March 2023. This application had an original budget of $72.7 million. However, this was doubled in 2021 to over $144 million. Further, the Auditor General found the product was put on hold in June 2024, pending approval of additional funding. What is the status of this application today? How many millions of dollars has SSC spent on this project? And the original budget was greatly underestimated. Why is that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. There's a few elements here. This is the project that I was talking about. Contract award is forthcoming in the coming months. The number's low number of months. The second piece is that this was a space where the technology was evolving very quickly because of cybersecurity. And the process was designed for a standard government procurement of heavy specifications, award, delivery over a number of years, and then final delivery. That doesn't work in an agile environment with technology changing. That approach has been changed to be much more agile project delivery, where you're looking at more smaller deliverables that grow over time. Thirdly, though, there were requirements that pushed the cost, and the primary cost that drove up was the requirement to hold data for a much longer time period than was necessary for critical cyber evaluations, and that is something that we worked on with our colleagues at CSE to say what is reasonable and needed. And sometimes what happens is it was overspecified. It's just a simple way of putting it, and so that was brought back down to bring it back into context. The money that is spent has only been on the procurement processes as we restarted this to prevent spending money on something that was overspecified and what we didn't need, but also something that conformed to today's cyber environment, not 2017. And that was the primary challenge, to restart this procurement and get it going. It is now back on track to deliver, but it's important to note that in the interim, the Government of Canada has always had a security incident event management system in place. It has been in place since prior to the creation of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and we continue to fund that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is Ms. Guzzi's time. And finally, Ms. Yip, I understand you'll be sharing your time. You've got 4 minutes. I'll let you make the handover, or do you want me to cut you off? All right, you'll make the handover. 4 minutes, please. Then I'll have a few questions at the end.
Okay, great, thank you. How will the publication of guidelines on vulnerability management help resolve the issues identified in the report?
Thank you for the question. So managing vulnerabilities is an important aspect. Under the Policy on Government Security and the Policy on Service and Digital, departments are accountable and responsible for implementing the rules that we lay out. And so to help them with this, the Guideline on Vulnerability Management will help them manage their own departmental system for identifying and mitigating the vulnerabilities that are put in place. Tools like endpoint visibility and awareness will help to identify some of those systems that have the vulnerabilities. So that's part of the, once you get the data, then you'll be able to identify and put in place the right controls, including patching those and addressing those vulnerabilities, those gaps. So that's part of the overall GC Vulnerability Management Program, which is which is a program being put in place as part of the funding that was offered to TBS from the budget 2024. And so we continue to work with our colleagues at the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, as well as Shared Services Canada, to help departments also prioritize which of those vulnerabilities that need to be addressed within our ecosystem.
I just have a quick question. With the new Purple team, this is addressed to you, Mr. Jones or Mr. Richaud, okay, have the capabilities and resources to deal with a massive cyber attack, and more importantly, be able to react quickly?
Is a proactive approach in terms of testing the controls that we have in place. So it's a preventative measure. However, in terms of a massive cyber attack, this is what is already in place with the teams within Treasury Board, as well as Cyber Center, who is the lead for the security incident response within the Government of Canada, working with Shared Services Canada, as well as departments and agencies who also play a role in terms of managing and responding to incidents that affect their systems.
Thank you. Over to you, Ms.
You've got 2 minutes. That was perfect, Ms. Yip.
Thank you. So this committee will undoubtedly do a report and perhaps make recommendations. Looking at, I know that the Auditor General's office said we could use Part 10 and have ministers provide a direction. That's still not consistent across all ministers, all departments, or all agencies. When we make recommendations, should we be recommending that where in most cases this may be an exception because we are looking at national security of our information systems, that we have tighter guidelines when it comes to cybersecurity? As an extension of that, if we are allowing contracts, through agencies for IT services, where some of them may even use subcontractors, what measures should we look to put in place as recommendations to ensure that these are trusted partners?
Yeah, now, Mr. Osborne, they might actually just say that's your job, but I will hear the answers here, so please.
I'm looking for their opinion.
Yes, your opinions, please, would be helpful.
And in terms of third-party risk, very important in putting those out. So we have published recommended procurement guidelines for cybersecurity to be baked into these procurements. So things that we would recommend. It enables everyone. We put those out for government, but also for Canada as well. So that's something that we work closely with Treasury Board and Shared Services to make sure are baked into all of our contracts, but we recommend them for all government procurement.
Yeah, the difficulty, I mean, we keep talking about crown corporations, but there are also parliamentary entities, judicial entities, shared governance organizations. So it is a complex landscape of some of these smaller organizations. And so, as I said earlier, personally, I welcome stronger authority to be able to impose some of the cyber hygiene that we do impose on core public administration departments and agencies. But I'm conscious of the fact that there are other factors that come into play. And so we've been trying to resolve that from a gaps perspective. I feel like in reaching out, we've started to get a better understanding of what the landscape is and what some of those challenges are. But I would welcome a report from this committee suggesting perhaps additional authorities to make sure that we close those gaps once and for all.
Thank you very much. That is the time. I do, before I excuse everyone and end this meeting, I have 2 questions from our analysts that I'm just going to put out there and look for a response from the relevant authority. Number 1, what is the status of the procurement of the Endpoint Visibility, Awareness, and Security Project? And number 2, has the government established the federal asset inventory of all applications and systems?
Perhaps I'll take the first question, and then maybe my colleagues at Treasury Board could take the second. Enterprise Vulnerability Visibility Project. The contract has been issued, and we are now in the deployment stage. That's the 37,000 deployments to date, and then that is accelerating to a much higher number by the end of the calendar year. I don't have the number in front of me, so I don't want to give you a wrong number. And then that will continue to accelerate into next fiscal year as well.
And unfortunately, the answer to the second question is we do not have funding to follow through on that second point.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, would you be able to submit that number, that one you didn't want to reference it? Yeah, if you could send it to the committee the next couple of weeks, that'd be great. So, well, thank you very much. I want to thank all the witnesses. Mr. Hayes, any last comments you want to make? No? Okay, I saw you. I thought... I never want to be an auctioneer. Any move can trigger a bid. So thank you to our witnesses for their testimony and participation in relation to the study on the report on the cybersecurity government networks and systems of the 2025 fall reports of the Auditor General. Thank you very much. We ran a little over time, so I'll be very quick here. This meeting is adjourned. And I want to speak to the subcommittee members right after this committee just offline. That would be Ms. Yip, Mr. Lemire, and Ms. Kuzi. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.